Good morning. I trust everyone made it through our latest brush with the hurricane. My name is Kevin Modero. This is the first in a series of technical webinars for the North Carolina Community College's Chief Information Officers. Today's topic is MDF IDF Management, and we're going to be going over some best practices and also some things not to do. I have recently taken over for Robin Kimball as the North Carolina Community College's advocate. Prior to that, I was on the MCNC client network engineering team for about 8 years, and I worked with many of the colleges in North Carolina. Many of you will remember me in that role as well. So what's in it for me? Well, good MDF IDF management can improve network performance. It can also reduce downtime. It can lower equipment costs. And we're also going to see that it may actually improve safety for our employees as well. So we're going to go over all these in some detail. And we're going to see how we can benefit from practicing good MDF and IDF management. So what do we mean by MDF and IDF? Well, an MDF is a main distribution frame. That's a term that goes back to early telco telecommunication days. Often nowadays it's referred to as facility rather than frame. But each building has an MDF. It's where the wide area network connection enters the building. It's the ingress and egress for most of our network traffic. And every building has an MDF. A building may have an IDF, an intermediary distribution facility. It may have more than one IDF. IDFs are uplinked back to the core at the MDF. And on our campuses, we have a network core in one of our buildings where our core routing and switching functions take place. This is also the MDF that is unique in that it has the NCREN connection ingress as well. So a building always has an MDF, and that's where we want to start when we're making any evaluation. It may have one or more IDFs that are uplinked to that MDF. And traffic typically all goes back to a network core where the internet connection is also located. Well, how bad can it get? We won't identify where these photos were taken, but this is an actual wiring closet. And as you can see, it's not only is this going to probably degrade our network performance, it's likely to cause our network equipment to degrade as well prematurely. And not only that, it's very likely a safety hazard for the people who have to work in this environment. Another enemy of the good IDF, MDF management is temperature. I carry a device like the one you see on the right with me at all times. It's one of the first things I check. We want the wiring closet to be below 70 degrees. Different equipment has different temperature ratings, but that's a good rule of thumb. We want the air to circulate because many of these devices need to radiate the heat that they generate. And we don't want a stagnant environment. We don't want an environment that is excessively dusty or has other chemicals that might be nearby or stored in the same room. So dust is also an enemy. Most network equipment has some sort of air circulation device, whether we're talking about routers, switches, or servers. And dust can accumulate and affect the electrical contacts. It can also affect the ability of the device to radiate its own heat. And all of these things can degrade the equipment and cause it to go out of service prematurely. And the janitor's closet should not be an MDF, although that is often the case, it seems. Buildings that were built before network infrastructure was such a priority have situations like this. And you can see this is problematic for a number of reasons. One, the equipment itself is very difficult to get to. There are paper products nearby, which is likely an OSHA violation when you store documents or other paper products in the wiring closet. And there also is likely to be a presence of some pretty harsh chemicals, cleaning agents in this environment. And while a custodian may only be exposed to that for a few minutes while retrieving something, a network engineer may have to spend hours in this room troubleshooting a problem. And sometimes there are just no words to describe bad MDF and IDF management. Not sure who has to work here, but all the things going wrong here, we'll just leave it without further comment. So what else goes on in a wiring closet? Well, a lot of times we need to talk about cabling. That's a critical component of our network and our network's performance. In this example, someone has customized a cable or is attempting to, and this is often the case. We very often have to terminate our own cables, and or for other reasons, cables getting pulled on excessively or just aging. This situation happens here where the shielding is not meeting the RJ45 connector, and that results in some exposed wires here that are carrying our signals. Now, this exposure is going to cause those signals to radiate, and normally that's not a problem because we have shielding. But when we don't have shielding, that radiated signal can get picked up by another cable, and this creates an event called crosstalk, where cables are actually hearing each other's signals, and that can wreak havoc on a network, causing retransmissions, and you'll get reports that the network is slow. So another issue we have are tight turns and kinks in the network cabling. Anytime we do that with electrical cabling, it increases the impedance or the resistance of that cable. And of course, this can cause retransmissions as well. So for the very same reasons as stated earlier with the bad cabling example, we want to minimize what we see here, which are these tight winds in the network cabling. I would hate to be the engineer that has to find a malfunctioning connection in this environment. So a couple other things we can do to improve not just network performance, but specifically reducing the amount of time that it takes an engineer to identify a problem. So troubleshooting, it often means downtime, and anything we can do to reduce that downtime means better service for our staff and our students. In this example here, color coding would be very helpful. We can get our category 5 and 6 cables in a variety of colors. It's very helpful to color code them by function. So we might have one color for data, one color for voice. We might even, and I recommend this as well, have a third color for uplinks. uplinks between switches, uplinks from an IDF to an MDF. Using color coding for voice data and uplinks helps someone identify or troubleshoot a problem or get familiar with the environment much more quickly. Another hazard is optical cable that has not been terminated. There is a wide variety of debate on the internet about whether or not this is actually a hazard, whether or not it can actually cause permanent damage to someone's eyesight. But this is also something we're looking for when we evaluate MDF and IDF management. Are there unterminated cables of any kind, really? Although electrical is, for networking, is a low volt cable that is not really a hazard. Optical cables could be a hazard if someone picks this up and stares at it too long, I guess. So one way to improve our MDFs and IDF right off the bat is pre-cut, pre-terminated cables. As you can see, those things we identified earlier, the exposed wiring, the inadequate shield, the RJ45 connector, all of those are avoided with pre-cut, pre-terminated cables. These even have the hoods to prevent the clip from breaking when they're pulled on. So, and most of us are using this, probably I would say 95% of the time. But replacing the cable we saw on that previous slide with a pre-cut, pre-terminated cable would be an improvement. Here we've got an example of very good MDF and IDF management. So we strongly recommend the use of these cable guides that route the cable across the rack to its destination. We highly recommend trays and racks that allow the cable to travel vertically up and down the rack to its destination. In each of these cases, there is not excessive twists or bends in the cable. There isn't any color coding, but there is plenty of room for labeling. And so this is an example of using the best of the best. Also, Velcro ties can keep cables from dangling, getting tripped over, and things like that. So this is an example of best practices here. And lastly, I want to talk about labeling. I can't stress enough the value of labeling. Whenever there's an outage, a disruption in service, we have to trace or identify its source, its destination, and nothing assists us better than cable labeling. It is time consuming. It's a great project for a student intern, as a number of the recommendations we've made here are as well. But there's no greater bang for the buck than labeling the critical cables in an MDF or IDF, because an engineer can get familiar with the environment much more quickly. Without labeling, we have to perform a number of tricks to figure out what's what and what goes where. Very often the local staff are not sure, and all of these factors greatly increase the amount of downtime, and which could be eliminated in many cases by the simple act of labeling. So 3 votes for cable labeling. Can't stress its value enough. Okay, so we've talked about what to do and what not to do. We want to have good IDF and MDF management practices, and these are things you can evaluate just by walking through a building and briefly observing the environments that your network equipment operates in. First and foremost, we want to look at temperature and dust accumulation. We want to look for the proper treatment of cables, their termination, color coding and labeling perhaps. We want to see that cables are not on the floor, they're not dangling on the side, they're not unterminated and exposing optics. And we want to see the use of those cable guides, zip ties, cable trays for all overhead cables. Those are the things that encompass good MDF and IDF management. If you're not sure, you can take a picture and send it to our client network engineering team for some free advice. That is cne@mcnc.org, the same domain suffix you see in front of you now. Client network engineering is available to advise you on all the aspects of your data network. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me as well, kmodero at that very same mcnc.org. Thanks, and monitor your inbox for future invitations to other topics in this series that are going to be available in the coming weeks. Take care, and we'll see you next time.